Okay, guys, listen, we just got back from being on tour. We went to the grocery for the first time, and oh my gosh, food is so expensive right now. Everybody knows this inflation is going crazy. What should we all do? Maybe you should consider doing what I have done. I gave a call to my friends at SD Bullion to have a conversation about possibly putting a little bit of my retirement funds into precious metals, gold and silver. The government is printing money at an absolutely unsustainable rate. I'm sure you know this. That means the value of your money is going to go down. But over time, gold and silver has been known to retain its value. All right. So don't take my word for it. All you got to do is text the word Cooper to 465-322. That's 465-322. That spells gold 22. That's how we do it. Text Cooper to that number. They're going to send you some information. They're also going to give you a discount on your very first order. All right. Check it out. SD Bullion. It ships straight to your door. They're a Christian owned company. I love it. I can do it. Boom, boom, boom. It comes straight to my door and I get to hold silver or gold coins in my hand. So do what I do. Text Cooper to 465-322 and get a brochure and start thinking about it now. Welcome back to Cooper Stuff. There is so much going on in our country. Everybody knows this. It's going crazy. The question that I have, I wonder if some of the questions that you have as well is this: what do we do now? Where do we go from here? How do we help? How do we tell people about the amazing love of Jesus Christ, who sets us free from the power of sin and the power of death, but he also sets us free from the guilt of sin, which is an amazing thing. Where do we go now in order to help to show the world who Christ is? And how, where do we go here now in our conversations with people that don't agree with us about stuff? Maybe friends that you have that are not Christians, so they have a different worldview. Or as you've noticed, maybe even Christians, friends, they say they're Christians, but they seem to have a different worldview. How do we actually go from here? And another thing I really want to talk about today is dispelling some of the lies, some of the myths that we are told every day about this issue of abortion, all this stuff. So here's what I decided to do. I have a brand new friend. We don't know each other very well, but we spoke at a similar event about 2 months ago in Nashville, and she has been in the fight to overturn Roe for a very long time, and she's been in the fight to help women with crisis pregnancies and all sorts of great stuff. And I thought she would be a great person for me to be able to. I'm going to be asking her a billion questions today. So I want you to give it up for our guest. This is Victoria Robinson. Victoria, say hello to everybody, and also do me a favor. Tell us exactly who you are so people know who we're dealing with.
Well, thank you, John, for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. And I'm Victoria Robinson. As you said, I've been in this fight for over 2 decades. And I have been working with women and now even with men who've chosen abortion. I've been doing that for all of the same time that I have been helping women in crisis pregnancies to understand all their options and to choose better options than abortion. The last thing we need women to believe is the lie that has been perpetrated against them that says your only option is abortion if you're single, or if XYZ is going on, or you can't afford it, or you're in college. I want to make sure these women know the truth. And because I chose abortion 35 years ago, I'm speaking from a place of knowledge. And unfortunately for me, I came about it honestly. If I could go back, John, and knew then what I know now, I would have never walked in that abortion clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina. So they kept my mouth shut while I was lying on that table and allowed these abortionists and these abortion workers to lie to me, manipulate me at the most vulnerable time of my life, and kill my baby because I was paralyzed with fear to speak up. Now they're not going to shut me up.
Wow, absolutely. I need to ask you. We got to start here. That's a, I mean, this you shared a little bit of this when we spoke together, and I was really moved by that and a bunch of other things that I mentioned that you said that honestly was brand new information for me. And so I think that one of my friends said, John, you got to have Victoria come on your show because, frankly, she's a lot nicer than you. She said, we agree on most, probably most stuff. She's compassionate. You need to have her on your show. And that's why I honestly, what I love about you is that you hate abortion. You care for people, you care for women, you believe that women are being lied to. And I think that you're coming from a place of good faith, a place that me and you absolutely agree. And I want to In other words, I'm saying is I am absolutely willing to hear from people that might disagree with me a little bit on where do we go from here? What's the best way to communicate it? I want to have those conversations with people of good faith that love God and love people and hate abortion. You're one of these people. I think it's one of the places that I'd like to start, if you don't mind.
Oh,
Tell me,
sure.
tell me what you mean when you say that you felt they were lying to you and you had no idea what you were getting yourself into. This is absolutely fascinating to me.
Well, here's the thing, John. I was a single mother with two little girls. My husband decided he didn't want to be married anymore, so he left us. He went from North Carolina to California. He got as far away from us as he could. He never sent financial support. He wasn't involved in their lives emotionally, physically. He would promise to show up. My two little girls were just little babies sitting on under 5, waiting for daddy to come visit, and he never showed up, and I'd have to drag them in crying. What did we do now? Why didn't he come? So this is the mindset. This is the situation I was in. I was having to work 2 jobs. It was a desperate time of my life, dropping them off daycare 6 a.m, picking them up at 6 p.m, working on the weekends. So it was easy when I met a guy at one of my jobs who said all the right things, because my self-esteem was shot. My husband did not live up to what he promised me when we got married. Now, although I was 16 when we got married and he was 19, I wasn't pregnant. I was just very stupid and naive. It still affected me. It affected me in a huge way. So I fell in love with a guy at one of my jobs. 9 months later, we'd been having premarital sex. I was pregnant. Now, we had talked about getting married and having our own biological children one day. So when I told him I was pregnant, it wasn't something I was excited about because I was struggling as a single mother. But if you'd have asked me then, I would have said, John, I am absolutely pro-life. I had a friend who'd had 8 abortions, and it ended our friendship because she had this flippant attitude of sleeping around. Well, I'd say, what are you going to do if you get pregnant again? Just have another abortion, treating it as birth control. So it angered me. But now here I was. And I'm painting this picture for you to hopefully, and some of your listeners, to understand some of the desperation that women are in, because the abortion industry knows it, John. They know how desperate these young women are. And so they lied and manipulated me into believing, when I shared my story with them in more detail, where I was, how I was struggling and working and had these babies I was barely trying to feed. Now my boyfriend's saying, we'll have children later, but not now. And she's on the phone, so kind and compassionate, to secure my appointment, telling me, you'd be really selfish, don't you think, as a mother, to bring another mouth to feed when you can barely feed the 2 you have? Do you want to do that to your little girls? You sound like a good mom. And there's nothing there anyway. You're only 6 weeks pregnant. It's not even a human yet. It's nothing more than removing a tumor, or getting a tooth pulled. It's a blob of tissue, a clump of cells. And when you're desperate, even though you know better, it's easy to manipulate you into believing, okay, she wouldn't tell me this if it wasn't true. My boyfriend is saying we'll have kids later. So all of these things are coming at you at the same time. And they manipulate you at the most vulnerable time of your life. They know exactly what to say, John, to get you to walk into their clinics and hand them your cash or your credit card so they can kill your baby, because it's a multi-billion-dollar business. They all learn the same verbiage and the same selling points, John, because in my career, as I've met women, thousands of them, they tell the same stories about what they're telling them in these abortion clinics, and they don't allow them to see the ultrasound. They keep it hidden. They don't want women to see their baby's heartbeat or to see the little arms and legs growing, because then they have to ask them, what is that? That doesn't look like a blob of tissue. So on the day of my abortion, I drove myself because my boyfriend couldn't even take me. He was out of town. I got a sitter for my kids. I drove myself, having my hand on my stomach, John, begging this blob of tissue for forgiveness for what I was about to do the whole time. So when I got there, I had already been crying. The same woman who secured my appointment was the one that called me into her office to collect my money. And she took my hand because I couldn't stop crying. And I said to her, wait a minute, are you sure this is the right thing? I have 2 children. I know the outcome of a pregnancy. Are you sure? Are you sure this is the right choice for me? Honey, of course it is. Remember what I told you on the phone? Then she reiterated everything she had said to me on our 2-hour conversation. She could tell I was undecided. She could tell, and I'm probably getting a little nervous about it. So she had to make sure she had that money in her hand. Then she actually said this to me, John. Two things that I'll never forget. One, do you think our government would allow this to be legal if it could harm you in any way? Wow. They're just trying to protect you. And also, once you leave here, never think of it again. You're young enough to have more children later. As soon as I handed her $350 cash, John, she put it in her desk, slammed the drawer shut, leaned in forward across her desk to me and said, hey, just let you know, if you change your mind when you're on that table, we don't give refunds here, so you won't be getting your money back.
Oh,
so
wow.
That compassionate woman who was making sure she secured my appointment, making sure she secured that money in her hand for her multi-billion-dollar boss, then her true colors came out. So it's an ugly business, abortion, and they are manipulating and lying to women every day to get them to buy into it. So yes, some people say to me, well, you know what? You deserve whatever pain you've had, heartbreak you've gone through. And I just look at them and say, well, you know what? You need prayers because you need Jesus more than I do. If you're going to look at me and cast a stone at me when you have nothing, you know nothing about the decision I made, where I was at that time, and how manipulated that I was. And I'm not saying, John, every woman that walks into an abortion clinic isn't feeling how I felt, scared and nervous. Some of them are just, as I said, this friend of mine who I believe, because I've heard since, is now a drug addict and an alcoholic. And I know it's because of having 7, 8 abortions. Who knows how many after we weren't friends anymore. So it is affecting women. But some of them walk in knowing all the facts and they still choose abortion. But I think most of them, the majority, are desperate and they don't know where else to turn.
Do you think so? So you feel, I mean, I'm kind of shocked, even though I've heard you talk about this before. I'm shocked all over again. So do you feel that, in other words, this isn't just your story? You feel you know other women that say the same thing, that they had that sort of manipulation of actually, this is you're going to be a worse mom if you don't do this. You're going to be hurting your other children because you can't do this. This is the best thing for you. That is the thing that you think is going. In other words, this isn't just your story. You feel pretty sure this is a lot of people's story.
There's no question. I can sit here and tell you 100% because I've heard them. I've been involved in this fight for 25 years. And I can tell you that I have heard the stories from these women throughout my travels when I'm speaking at an event, whether I'm speaking at a church or a fundraising event, wherever I go, or they'll write me on social media, or they'll reach out to me on my website for help. Yes, these are their stories, one after another, John. It is a multi-billion-dollar business. They do not care about women. It has nothing to do with women's health and women's rights. It has to do with their bottom line, which is greed. And they will say and do whatever they need to get that money in their drawer. If it was about women's health, John, let's take the abortion pill, for example. Women can now get abortions by mail. So they call up an abortion clinic. Hey, I need to get the abortion pill. Okay, well, how far along are you? Well, how far along do I need to be? You can't be further than 10 weeks. Yeah, I'm only 8 weeks. They send them these pills in the mail to have abortions at home without them helping them with an ultrasound to make sure that what they're telling them is truth, because they know how dangerous it is for these women to take these pills after 10 weeks of pregnancy. They know. I've already started getting messages from these girls who are delivering their dead, intact children in a toilet because they're 12, 13, and 14 weeks pregnant. Here's the other thing I would say.
Can I interrupt you?
I'm sorry?
Can I interrupt you really quick?
Yeah.
This is horrifying. So you're saying, I'm kind of confused because I don't know much about this. You're saying that the pills are designed for a certain amount of weeks, yes, and there's no accountability to know. And so they send them anyway under the auspices of we're helping people, when in reality, this is like a really horrific thing. Is it also illegal as well?
No, it's not illegal in this country,
Okay.
John. And here's the other thing, though. They're sending it as soon as they get their credit card number. because that's what matters the most,
I
is that
see.
credit card number. But here's the other thing I want to say about the abortion pill. There is a pill called the abortion pill reversal that has saved over 4,500 children since it has been brought into the market. I have women who have contacted me who've called the abortion clinic after taking the first pill. It's a set of 3 pills, and they've changed their mind, begging the abortion clinic, asking them, what can I do? I want my baby. I don't want to go through with it. And the abortion industry will lie to them and say, too late. Your baby's going to be deformed, mentally handicapped. You need to take all the pills. If they care so much about women, John, why not tell them about the abortion pill reversal? Abortionpillreversal.com. They've already got their money. They've already mailed them the abortion pills. If they're so concerned with women's health and women's choice, then why not tell them about getting help through the abortion pill reversal? It makes no sense because they don't care about women's health or women's choice. They want it to be one, and that's abortion.
That's really damning. Are you saying that? So I've never heard of this. So are you saying, and I'm sorry to be so ignorant all the time, but I've never heard of this. You're saying they send it in a multi-pill thing. And let's say you've taken the first pill. You're saying that there is another pill, almost like an antidote, that you could actually get that then would kind of nullify the other. That's available. In other words, this isn't like, this isn't conspiracy theory propaganda. This is real, but the companies don't let them know that that also is an option. Because they just actually because they actually love abortion. Is that actually what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. This is 100% fact. And I am getting the messages from these women who are devastated because no one told them about the abortion pill reversal. It doesn't work every time. It'll depend on their pregnancy. It'll depend on how many pills they take. But over 4,500 babies, I believe now to date, have been saved from the abortion pill reversal with women who've changed their mind. Go look up abortionpillreversal.com. If you're someone who's taken the pill or you're considering taking the abortion pill, make sure you have that on hand as well. Because if you change your mind, they could help you. Don't call the abortion clinic because they're not going to tell you about it. So that's my whole point. You've already got your money, Mr. Abortion Industry, Ms. Abortion Industry. Why not give them the resource if these women are sobbing on the phone to you saying, please tell me how I can save my baby. I changed my mind.
Wow.
I rest my case.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really damning case to make. I mean, I'm shocked about this because I've never heard of this, but I'm not shocked about the, bloodlust of the abortion industry. I absolutely believe that. I believe it's an actual spiritual truth. The Bible says one thing we quote on the show all the time from Proverbs, all who hate me love death. It's talking about wisdom. All who hate wisdom actually love death. I believe that's a spiritual thing that happens. I'm also not shocked that the father of lies, which is Satan, he's the father of lies. And man, does he know how to manipulate his children into, it's like he disciples them. He disciples his children into how to manipulate people and how to deceive people. And they trade evil for good and they put, good for evil. And all of a sudden, instead of making a truthful argument to a woman about her, as you say, there's lots of options. Instead, they manipulate and say, actually, you're being a better person by having this abortion. I mean, that is ugly. I'm floored, but I'm not shocked because I do understand the biblical model. But so you don't feel that it's too hyperbolic. I'm leading you. I'm leading you in an answer because I've listened to you before, so I know your answer to this. You're one of the first people I heard it from, actually, of how pro-abortion the abortion industry is. In other words, it's not pro-choice. It's not. It's just a bloodlust. I mean, what are the various reasons for that? I mean, we have the spiritual reason that me and you already know, and you can talk about that if you want to. But what do you think the other reasons are? For instance, is the degrowth movement, which is like we want to get the population down and whatnot. Is that part of this movement? What all is involved in this? Why do they like it so much?
It's demonic. And as you said, we have,
amen. I believe that, girl.
We have an enemy who's roaming and he wants to get rid of an entire generation, which is how how Planned Parenthood even began through Margaret Sanger to get rid of an entire generation of people, an entire population of Black African Americans and minorities, which is why it blows my mind when the Black community supports abortion. So, that's a whole nother thing. John, it's number one, it's demonic. As a Christian, there's no question. It cannot be anything more than demonic. It is about greed. It's about power. These abortion clinics, let's say Planned Parenthood, one of the largest, they're shutting down all over the country right now, John, since Roe, but yet they have spewed their lie for decades that they only 3% of their business is abortion. Really? Then why are you shutting down all over the country?
It's unreal.
Because people who are willing to kill children lie. That's why. But they also line the pockets of these politicians. So these politicians in Washington are right in bed with Planned Parenthood. I think there's so much demonic activity that goes on in Washington, John. There are so many actors and actresses and politicians and people of power that are involved, I'm going to say it, in, I believe, satanic stuff. So I'm telling you, this stuff reaches places people would think it's a movie. And it isn't a movie because I've been around it. I met someone recently where I was speaking in Redding, California, and a couple came up to me and they were sharing at this banquet I was at for a pregnancy resource center. And they said, yeah, we just moved here from up north, but we're still going to help women get out of the satanic cults. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, Victoria, the satanic cults, they impregnate girls in their cults just for the ritual of abortion or to sacrifice the child. I said, wait a minute. I've heard about this stuff, but I've not ever met someone face to face. Said, Victoria, we've been in this for 20 years. We won't even tell you the stories because you wouldn't sleep at night. Of girls coming to them saying, I don't want to allow them to kill my baby. Can you rescue me out of this? It's like same things you hear about human trafficking, rescuing girls. We're rescuing young girls out of cults who are using abortion for their ritualistic sacrifices. This stuff is going on. This is not conspiracy, people. This is not, oh, she's some radical, freaky chick, which I don't really care what you think of me. I care about what one person thinks of me. But I am telling you, this is reality of what we're dealing with. So there's a lot of things around abortion. It's satanic, it's evil, it's wicked, and it's it's made some people very, very wealthy, built mansions, given people yachts. And that's why these politicians will fight to the death for abortion.
That's just unreal to me. You mentioned the Margaret Sanger aspect of this, and I'm kind of surprised to find out that there are still a lot of people that either don't know or refute Margaret Sanger's involvement with eugenics, her racism, her we really really desiring to see the Black population diminish. I mean, I've read that for so long that I'm surprised to see some people refuting that. I only just found out this week from my friend Virgil from the Just Thinking podcast. I didn't know that in 1966, Martin Luther King Jr. won the Margaret Sanger Planned Parenthood Award and wrote a speech about how great Margaret Sanger was and how great Planned Parenthood. I'm assuming you know that, but why do you think it is that I've asked 7 of my friends, did you know that Martin Luther King won the Margaret Sanger Award and praised the organization, and none of them knew it? Are you assuming that some Christian pastors don't want Christians knowing that? What's the deal with this?
Oh, gosh, you want to talk about Christian pastors? We'll talk about that too, and the church. John, I think that there are powers that be that make sure people don't find out this information. I had a young woman that was going through one of my retreats recently in Texas, and there were women gathered in a group while we were doing group session of counseling. And when we got to her to share what she wanted to share, she was smiling and tears were flowing. And she said, I feel like God's healing me right now just by listening to your stories. It was 18 and 19 years ago that I chose abortion one after another. Every time I've went to research or Google, am I doing this? Am I depressed? Is this happening because of my abortions? Nothing came up except telling me there's no correlation to depression and abortion. There's no this to correlation to this or abortion, because they make sure women don't find these things out. So she said, all these years I have felt like I was crazy, and that it was just me that there was something wrong with, until now I'm hearing you guys have dealt with the same pain that I've dealt with for 18 and 19 years. And I feel like God is healing me already, just hearing your stories. And we've only just begun this weekend. So they make sure they do their part, wow, so that others don't hear the truth. And that's why you may have to dig a little bit more. I tell people all the time, I don't even take what a pastor says for truth. I'm going to go and read scripture to tell me if what he is saying or a woman preaching is telling me is truth. You need to do the same. You don't even have to listen to me. Go dig and do the research. It's out there if you'll just find it. There are too many people who don't know about this woman, Margaret Sanger, and Planned Parenthood knows they're catching on. So they've kind of shied away more from her, John, if you'll notice in the last couple of years, because they got a little bit nervous about it. But she's still their hero.
Well, yeah, 2020 sort of brought everything, anything that could ever, anybody that could be accused of racism or this or that, people are wanting to kind of scrub some of that for obvious reasons. But I'm kind of amazed about this. So that actually reminds me of something I wanted to say, and you feel absolutely free to disagree with me here. My position, these Christian pastors are making me so they are making me so angry. I still haven't like tweeted. I don't tweet much, but I tweet, once a week, twice a week, something like this. I'll tweet. And I just said, I can't tweet. I'm too mad. And I don't want to anger tweet, sort of like they say, like, don't discipline your children when you're actually angry. You pray and you wait till the anger subsides. So you're actually disciplining them with grace. Right. I was like, I'm too mad at these pastors. They are making me so sick. I've seen so many pastors telling their congregations, don't celebrate this. It's not that we're not happy that Roe's overturned, but don't celebrate because people are hurting. You don't spike the football. We don't want to get to this or this. And if they've said anything good about Roe being overturned, it's with a giant caveat. It's like, yes, it's good, but, and it's they will never talk about the sin. They won't talk about repentance. They won't talk about any of these things. They won't talk about family. They won't talk about the need for fathers. They won't talk about sexual purity, Christian purity. They won't talk about any of these things. And so I guess what I would say is, A, what are your thoughts on that? Feel free to disagree with me on any level that you want to. And then number two, why do you think that is? I'm curious your thoughts, if you have any.
Well, first of all, John, have you met me? You think I'm going to disagree with anything you just said?
I'm just making sure.
I've been dealing with pastors, buddy, for 25 years, begging them to give me 5 minutes in their pulpit to talk about this issue. No, Victoria, we don't want to upset anyone. So-and-so's pro-choice, and they just paid for all our new carpet. And I have looked at pastors and said, and I would say to them, take the carpet and leave, rip it up and tell them to take it with them on their way out. This is the problem today, John. We have got wussy pastors in the pulpit who are so worried about offending someone in their church, about the tither in the church. It sickens me. It sickens me. We've got churches on every corner in this country. Why are we in the shape we're in? Because of the men and women that are standing in those pulpits, not doing what they're called to do, not trusting God to say what they need to say. And here's what the message they're sending, John. And I've told the pastors this as well. When you don't talk about abortion and you don't address abortion from your pulpit, those 1 out of 4 men and women who are sitting in your church who have either had an abortion or participated are just internalizing it to mean, see, I knew I was right. Even my pastor won't even talk about it. I knew it was that bad. It's the one sin God won't forgive. I knew even my pastor won't even let someone talk about it or bring the subject up or celebrate the fact that we can't kill children anymore. So shame on pastors. I put a post up the other day on Sunday that said, on Facebook, if your pastor does not mention Roe today, If he does not celebrate today and give God thanks and glory for answered prayer of 50 years, get a new church. I'd be running out of there so fast my head would spin. I will not attend a church with a pastor who doesn't have the kahunas to talk about abortion. So yes, I agree with you 100%. This gets me fired up because they're supposed to be the people that stand there and leading their sheep. When they're not leading their sheep in this issue, John, well, how are we to expect Christians that are now saying abortion shouldn't be? Why did we overturn Roe? I heard of a Christian woman, very Christian, so I thought, friend of my daughter's. My daughter called me really upset the other day because she put a picture up holding her daughters, saying how angry and sad and tragic it is that her daughters now won't have the choice when they grow up. They're going to grow up in a country where they can't choose abortion. A Christian. My daughter was floored because she's been friends with this person for years. But she's not the only one telling me these stories. I'm going to take it a bit further. I'm not trying to judge somebody. It's not my place to judge. It's his. But my Bible says you'll know them by their fruit. And I'm going to tell you something, Christian. If you're one of those Christians who has been writing me, telling me you need to simmer down, you need to stop celebrating, you need to just, stop gloating and grandstanding. I'm going to say to you, I don't know what Jesus you serve, but it's not the same one I serve. And I don't know what Bible you're reading, but it's not the same one I read. Because even God called out sin. Yes, he did it in love. And trust me, John, I've had to hit that delete button many a times when I am going to put up a post on Instagram. I got rid of Twitter back when the election was happening, but I've had to many times delete and then pray and say, Lord, help me say this in the way you want me to say it, because I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to trigger someone, but I also know God has called me to stand up for truth. And it's conviction that's going to bring change, John. How are we going to bring conviction on people if we don't speak the truth?
Man, that's straight up fire, Victoria. So let me ask you this, because you said something towards the beginning about people tithing, pastors, maybe they have people tithing that are whatever. I mean, I make fun of myself because every week I have like a little piece of me dies, a little piece of the naivety of old John just goes away. I've heard people say kind of what you said before. It sounds kind of cynical, but I can't see any way that it's not actually true. And it's almost too terrible to imagine that it's just all about the money. But do you actually, in other words, have you actually experienced it? That's not just your feeling or stories you've heard. You've experienced that. What you're talking about are people say, I don't want to make some people mad because of the income, because of the tithe, what it's going to mean for this, that, the other. You really think that? I mean, I think that's happening too, but it hurts, doesn't it? But you really think that?
It does hurt, John. It does hurt because when I became a new Christian and got involved in this work, I was so sure every pastor would want me to come and speak at their Sunday morning service to talk about this issue and offer people help who'd had abortions, or let people know if you find yourself in an unplanned pregnancy, how you can get help. It wasn't happening. I was the CEO of 3 different pregnancy centers, John, throughout my career before I started my nonprofit. And I can tell you, I would have pastors' luncheons, 2 would show up. I would look at the books of the donations coming in, and I couldn't even get pastors to put our pregnancy centers in their budget. How about sending $25, $50 a month to our centers? If all the churches in our area would just do that, it would impact the pro-life work we're doing at these pregnancy centers, where, John, by the way, pregnancy center resource centers are offering free options counseling, free diapers. They're offering free cribs, free strollers, free car seats, free clothing, free help, free counseling for women who've had abortions. Okay, pastor, you don't want to get involved because you say, well, Victoria, I don't know enough about it. See, John, Satan works just as much in the pulpit, my friend, as he does in abortion clinics. And some of them are just too blind to see it. So I would say to them, okay, well, you don't have to know everything. Bring someone like me in. Let me deliver a message on a Sunday morning. Just share your pulpit with me. And they still wouldn't do it because of being afraid to offend those that are in their church that are pro-choice. You know why they're pro-choice? Because the pastor doesn't address it. He doesn't address the truth, and he's allowing them to walk blindly supporting the murder of children.
That's absolutely crazy. I'm looking up, you just said something. I'm looking up this article that I saw last night that, I mean, I think part of what's going on for me is like, I'm really sad to hear that. I think the churches, I think that some people go to churches, all right, like my church. I go to a small church. We're maybe 400 people. I don't know, 400 people, but my church leaders have done incredible work. I have to give it up for my church leaders because they kind of trained. I guess what I'm saying is I have the benefit of being trained and discipled by men and women who have done amazing work to help women. And so it's a little bit like, this is like our identity. This is part of who we are, right? Helping the poor, helping the needy, showing the world who Christ is. Then to find out that there are lots of churches not doing that, I go, okay, maybe there is a little bit of truth when people say the church isn't doing enough. All right. But I'm wrestling with these two things because there are a lot of people doing incredible work.
Yes, there are. Don't hear what I'm not saying, John.
Oh, I'm not at all. No, I think you did an excellent job of saying that. And in one of the other areas, I read an article. I just want to promote it real quick. I read an article last night from Delano Squires. This is on theblaze.com in case anybody wants to check it out. And the name, I got to tell you the name of this article. I read it. I just thought this article is so good. I mean, now this is a Firestorm article, but womb to tomb accusers sound a lot more like pro-abortion atheists than like pro-life Christians. I mean, this article was a bombshell. But one of the things that Delano Squires is saying in here that I think the church is also not doing a good job on, that I think we do have some blame. We never, ever talk about God's design for families and for fathers and for, like I said, sexual purity, and that sex is designed within marriage between a man and a woman. We're too scared to talk about those things, I think, for the same reason as you just mentioned the pro-life stuff. It seems all in the end about not wanting to offend anybody. And we've done it sort of in the name of love and compassion, but I think that that's actually hurting people. And I think that that's kind of where I'd like to get in to ask you some questions. What do we do now? How do we actually help women? This is something you're really passionate about. And what do we do now? What good is it for me to give my money to one of these pro health centers, pro-life centers, whatever? What good does it do? What do you think we need to do? What does our tone need to be? You've already said we need to celebrate, which I agree with. What do you think our tone should be, Victoria?
Well, I think we can start by not condemning and judging the young woman who's pregnant out of wedlock. And many of the women that I've counseled throughout my career, John, have come to the pregnancy center that I was working at and running, and they've walked in after they've gone to their church or to a church in the community, and sometimes more than one, asking for help, but been turned away. So that's one of the things the church can do: step up and realize that these women need your help, and they need to be able to go to the hospital called church to get that help without being told, well, you shouldn't have been having sex before you were married anyway. Okay, we know that. I meet people, I'm 58 now, John, and I'm single. And I meet people my age who say, well, I don't see the big deal, that are Christians. I don't see the big deal, Vic. I'm not going to have children anymore. God wouldn't expect me to be celibate because I've already had sex before, and I'm not going to have the effects that I would have when I was younger. Really? I didn't know my Bible said, hey, Vic, since you're divorced, it's okay to go sleeping around because you're not 20 or 15 anymore. No, it doesn't. God's word doesn't change. It's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So we've got to change the mentality of how people are so flippant, as you alluded to the sex and to family and what sex was designed for. And some people say, why doesn't God want us to have sex? Well, it's to protect you, honey. That's why. It's to protect you from an unwanted pregnancy, from an STD, from getting your heart broke when that guy doesn't call you tomorrow. So, there's a lot of different things that happen from that soul tie you make with that person, guy or girl that you're with. But the church can start by teaching that. Having people come in and teach purity. I used to do it for years. I have a message called Real Love Waits. I don't until I do. Schools, private, public, youth groups brought me in for years to bring this message. Now the phone stops ringing because they don't want to offend the parents of these kids who are tithing. We need to teach these kids, you matter, you're worth more than selling yourselves short by having sex outside of marriage. And let me show you why that's the best plan, why that's God's best plan for you. So why don't we start there with education, church? So Mr. Pastor, bring someone like me in. Put your money where your mouth is. It doesn't have to be me. Bring somebody in that can bring a message to your youth that you don't have to give if it's uncomfortable or you don't feel like you're qualified to do it. There's plenty of people out there that are. So bring them in because you're doing them a service like you're supposed to be doing by teaching them biblical principles about sex. Then there's a start. How about supporting your local pregnancy resource center? How about putting them in your yearly budgets? And every month, Pastor, how about doing a baby bottle campaign for those pregnancy centers? They're begging churches to do baby bottle campaigns, which means they bring you bottles once a year and you give them out to your church and they fill them with checks and change. This is a huge blessing to these pregnancy centers who are doing so much, John. They are right on the front lines of doing more than the church. Then the majority. Listen, there are great churches, and I've met great pastors who continue to invite me to come back, but there are more than there should be of those who don't. So let's step up instead of judging or looking at to the church members or looking at this young girl who walks in pregnant and she's 15 or 16, like you don't even want to sit next to her because she has leprosy. What Jesus is that? What any part of Jesus who would treat someone like that? These people want you to run to Christ, but you don't even show them Christ. St. Francis of Assisi said, at all times, preach the gospel. When necessary, use words. People that are on the pro-choice side want to say, what are you doing now? What are you doing? What are you doing? Because I can tell you it's the pro-life people who are fostering children. It's the pro-life people who are adopting children. It's the pro-life, truly pro-life people who are supporting their local pregnancy centers, who are marching in the March for Life, and who are helping women that are in crisis. What are you doing?
I think that's really great. You know, a couple of things I would probably reiterate that I love that you say as well. I mean, I am really saddened that the church doesn't teach holiness in general. I mean, holy living, I mean, sanctification should be the absolute air that we breathe every week. And a part of holy living, obviously, is going to have to be sexual purity. And I think tying that back into the demonic culture of death loving, sin, satanic abortion industry you mentioned earlier, all of this really it's all tied together. You're talking about pornography, sex trafficking, abortion, fatherlessness. All of this stuff is really tied in together with this just culture of death via sexual liberation that is no liberation at all. It's a form of slavery, right? The church, I think, is doing a horrible job teaching on these things.
Yeah.
And maybe if I was to give my most gracious, best heart towards these pastors, maybe they're pendulum swinging from what you talked about, which is what I would consider to be kind of an old school, stiff-necked, shun the person that is in sin, while the church is not hard on some sins, but the church is always really hard on other kinds of sins.
Yeah.
And I personally always find that disgusting. I always hear people say that when they talk about Pride Month or something like that, they'll say, well, the church has been, terrible because they had a double standard about this and this. And I say, I hear what you're saying. We should be passionate about holiness, passionate about what the word of God says. And I think what you're saying is great about that. Let me ask you this question, because it's what you just said. So as somebody that's been involved in this in a really long time, and as somebody who has nothing to gain from promoting it, right? In other words, you're not going to make any money for saying yes. I've become a big believer in giving money to pregnancy centers. In other words, I've become a believer that this isn't just money you're throwing away. They're actually doing really good work.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you agree with that, but But tell me, why you actually think this isn't just like cutting a check to something and sometimes you give to charity and then you find out 80% just went to the bureaucracy of the people involved and they're all making bank. Do you think that that's the case for these pregnancy centers, or you think it is a thing that is good to give money to?
I 100% believe it's something to give money to. I've been involved a long time. I know many pregnancy center directors and their workers from across the country personally. I've spoken at their banquets for 20 years. These people have a true heart for women and for men and families, and they are making a difference. They're besides live action, because of the education they give. So I don't know that you would call them, they're a pro-life organization. Besides them, I can't sit here and tell you another pro-life organization that I would say give money to, except for pregnancy resource centers. I can guarantee you that money's going into good soil and it's being used appropriately, and they need it. They need it. They need it more than anybody. The abortion industry is getting millions and millions of dollars from these celebrities who are doing fundraisers and concerts from the government. But these pregnancy resource centers kept the government out so that they were able to pray with someone, because they are Christian led. And at the centers that I was at, John, God always met our needs. We didn't have a whole lot of excess, but God always met our needs. But our building was paid off due to a generous church here in Tennessee. So there are those churches that are doing a lot of things. Even if we could just 10% of the churches that aren't would start doing more, these pregnancy resource centers wouldn't have to depend so much on, gosh, I hope we can pay this bills, because they're human, they have their moments. But one of the things I can tell you about pregnancy resource center directors, their boards, their staff, and their volunteers, they are faithful people. They are faithful people who know they're in the business, they're in God's business, and that he's going to meet their needs and make sure he's part of their solution. But just think about that, listeners. You can be part of that solution. Whether it's $10 a month, $25 a month, whatever amount you can send them, when the masses will do a little, John, it makes a huge difference. And so I 100% would tell anyone, I wouldn't speak at their banquets if I didn't think it was good soil that I'm asking people to give, because I'm not going to ask someone to give their hard-earned money into a ministry that doesn't have good fruit. And the reason I will say I have no issue with asking, even for finances for my nonprofit, Reassemble, is because I don't want to rob you of a blessing to give. You may never sit at a pregnancy center in a counseling room with a girl contemplating abortion who's already had one, but sowing into that ministry helps them be able to do that. So it's robbing you of a blessing when we don't ask. And that's why I love to ask for people's help, for the finances that they have and the resources to pour into these nonprofits, because they are, oh my gosh, they are fruitful. They are making a difference. I've seen it with my own eyes, John. At our pregnancy center, I think more women found Christ than some of the churches, not all of them, than some of the churches in our community combined in a year.
Wow.
And it was my rule at the pregnancy center was, hey, girls, we don't throw up Jesus and we don't thump them over the head with the Bible. We love them from the moment they walk in, and we show them compassion. And we let them ask us, what's different about you? I've been coming here for a while now, and you guys have never made me feel condemned or judged. Can you tell me about this ministry? I know it's got something to do with Jesus, doesn't it? And that's the greatest compliment and the greatest success, is when someone asks you, instead of you saying, do you know you're going to hell if you do this? That's just going to make people run. And because they already don't feel worthy, John. They've gotten pregnant out of wedlock. They know, even if they haven't been in church, instinctively, this is not the best choice I could have made. I am pregnant and I'm not married. People just know that. So when they come to you, they need to feel like, I don't care where you've been. What I care about is where you're going. And I'm going to help you on this journey. And with God's help, with Jesus's help, we'll do it together. So that's what they need. So yes, pour your resources into your local pregnancy resource centers. Come to their banquets when you hear about them, to hear about the great work they're doing, and to come prepared to give more. Volunteer, pray for them every day. If you do nothing else, just pray for them every single day because they need our prayers and our finances.
Mm. You know, you mentioned live action. I saw this post from Lila Rose. Listen to this. Following an abortion, women are 34% more likely to develop anxiety disorders, 37% more likely to have depression, 81% more likely to have mental problems, 110% more likely to abuse alcohol, 155% more likely to commit suicide. This reminded me a little bit of your book and your message. They lied to us. And I thought as we end, you might want to promote that or promote something. I mean, I think you've done something quite unique on your newest, which is for men as well. But this whole message, if these people loved women, they would at least be explaining to them after your abortion, this is what you might be experiencing. I mean, at the very least. So it's a lie, and we've already talked about that, but why don't you promote your book, tell people where to get it, whatever you want to say about it, you got the floor.
Well, John, first of all, that would be bad for their business if they told women the truth. I've told many people that are pro-choice, and it shocks them that I'm more pro-choice than they are. And they're taken aback. What do you mean? Well, do you truly care about women knowing their options? Well, I mean, yeah, okay, then that's what I do. I talk to them about adoption. I talk to them about parenting. I talk to them about abortion, the questions they have about abortion, but I tell them the truth. I'm not going to lie or manipulate them. I'm going to tell them the truth, including all the stats that you just read. And so my first book, They Lied to Us, you can write me through my website, victoriarobinson.org. If you don't want to buy it through Amazon, my publisher was bought by Amazon, so it's available on Amazon. And that book has stories from women who chose abortion and how it affected their life. My own stories in there. It's in its 5th print. My second book just came out last month called They Lied to Us, plural, too. They Lied to Us Too, which is men's stories. Yours is in the mail for you and Corey, John. And that's stories from men who were participated in an abortion, whether they talked her into it, whether they knew, whether they didn't know she was pregnant and found out later, whatever the case was, or just supported her because it was her body, her choice, right? Which is another lie, John. It's 2 separate bodies, so it's not her body. But because we've emasculated men in this country for so long, and basically said to men, hey, sit down, shut up, you don't matter in this choice. It doesn't take a man with a uterus to have empathy and have sympathy and compassion for the mistreatment and the brutal murder of the unborn. Just like no different than me not having melanin in my skin can see the injustice of minorities being abused. So that argument is like, just shut up already, okay? Just shut up. These babies were not made by just women. Okay, the guy's sperm did it, whether it was through artificial insemination. However, you can't get a baby without a man's sperm, not a woman dressing like a man's sperm, but a man. Men will never, ever, ever be able to have children. That's a whole nother show. I don't care what society tells you. So the men as well, John, are suffering from an abortion. We haven't wanted to talk about that because the abortion industry knows if men start growing a pair and rising up being the men of God created them to be, to protect their women, because that's how God made you guys, John. You're the protectors. You go out and you hunt and you bring home the food. You take care of your wife and children. You're a woman. The women were made as God made us to nurture, to give life. So when a woman realizes she ended the life of her child, when a man realizes he ended the life of her child and he did nothing to protect his children, they're devastated. Whether they chose or were manipulated, it doesn't matter once you realize, because the other argument is the rape victim. Well, what about the rape victim? John, less than 1% of women become pregnant from a rape, and rape is a brutal act. It's horrific, and the rapist should pay with his life instead of the child paying with its life. 2 women in my career over 2 decades that were raped and became pregnant. One chose abortion, one did not. She chose adoption. The one who chose abortion said to me, John, everyone was telling me, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. It's going to be a reminder of that guy and what he did to you. So she did. And she said, Victoria, when I realized what I'd done, that was not just my rapist baby, but mine. it was like the trauma of that ugly trauma of rape was compounded again by the trauma of the abortion. The other woman who placed her child for adoption said to me, God took something that was so ugly and made something so beautiful out of it. And I was able to hand my son to a couple who could not have children. So that's the other argument people want to spew here, right and left. And as I said, do not hear what I'm not saying. Rape is horrific, and my heart goes out to any woman who has been raped. But I will tell you that an abortion does not have to be your answer, because abortion is traumatic. So my books are available. Go to my website if you're someone who's had an abortion and you need help. I'm hearing from more and more men and women because they're being triggered right now. Talking about trigger, that word, because they're hearing about it everywhere they look and it's impacting their life. And I want them to know there's help for you. God can redeem and restore, and he can heal you. I promise you, if you just give him a chance, he can do it. So get in touch with me and I'll help you find the resources in your community, or I'll tell you about our Reassemble retreats that we're doing and our the therapy that we offer to get you the help you need. Nobody should walk around wounded from an abortion wound. There is help for you, and we want to make sure that you get it. So men and women are being impacted, John, and I'll end with this quick story. When I called the father of my aborted child, hadn't spoken to him in 10 years since our abortion. I wanted him to know about my book, They Lied to Us, coming out. I wanted him to rest assured I didn't give away any identifying factors about who he was. When he heard my voice, because all I said was, hey, it's me, he started to weep. He was crying so hard, John, I couldn't understand what he was saying. And he finally composed himself to tell me, I've been waiting for this call for over a decade, Vic, to beg you for your forgiveness for what I made you do. It's haunted me all these years, and for 8 years I've been in therapy dealing with it. He said, I should have protected you. I should have protected our child, and I failed you both. Can you ever forgive me? And in that moment, I realized, John, I hadn't fully forgiven everyone involved in my abortion. But when I did, my healing was full circle. The second thing that I realized was I felt that sweet Holy Spirit speak to my heart and say, don't ever forget these fathers. These children have fathers that are hurting too. So don't ever forget them. So I've made it my mission to speak out on behalf of men. And when I do at men's events or men's conferences or churches, wherever I am, the men will approach me afterwards and they'll just say, thank you. Thank you for finally talking about us. But they're not ready to speak out yet. So in my book, these brave men, I changed all their names because they asked me to. Only one man in the book is his real name. They wanted to share their stories so other men would realize it's not just the women who will be impacted by the choice you're about to make. So stand up, man up, and tell her you're going to walk through this with her because you're going to do what's right.
Well, that's left me quite emotional. Emotional in real time. I don't know what to say. That's very, very powerful. Very illuminating, and I really learned a lot on the episode. And now I'm going to call my friend and say, just so you know, Victoria is not that much nicer than me. Just so you know, she's not that much. I mean, no. I think it's really powerful, and I just think we have a lot to pray about. I know I do. I have a lot to pray about, and a lot to think about. What I am passionate about is what you just said. How the power of Christ sets us free. Man, what a glorious Savior we have. Otherwise, I don't know how people live. I don't know how they live with themselves after these things. How you forgive someone who did something horrific to you, except the power of Christ, who has forgiven us, and the power of the Spirit. And me, all of a sudden, I go, you know what? If Christ has forgiven me, I can forgive that person. What an amazing Savior we have. So it's left me emotional with a lot to think about. Thank you so much. I do want to encourage people, check out the book. It really is, that's such a unique idea. This idea, hearing men's stories. I never would have even considered that until I met you recently. So thanks for coming on and rocking with us. I appreciate it a ton.
Thank you, John, for having me. And to those pastors, I want you to feel beat up on. If you don't have the courage only because you lack the knowledge, have the courage to invite someone like me to come to your church, because I know that the majority of you do love people and you want to do what's right. So I don't want you to feel like we think you're these horrible people. Just people in fear, John, don't do what they should. So God bless you guys. Thank you for having me. Anytime, John, you are a rock star, literally.
Right. All right. Thanks. I hope you guys have a great week.
3 to 5.